Good
afternoon. My name is Carol McCoy. Today is October 12th, 2022. We are at the Nashville Bar Association for the purpose of the Legal History Project of the Nashville Association. This interview is being conducted by me of Terry Hill. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Terry, to start off, please tell me your full name, date of birth, and where you were born.
Terry Lee Hill, December 19th, 1951, Detroit, Michigan.
And if you would, briefly tell me about your paternal and maternal grandparents, their names, where they were, and a little bit about their educational background and children, things like that.
Well, nobody went to college, so I can cover that in one fell swoop. My paternal, Perry Hill, died before I was born, so I never got to meet him. My grandmother, Ella May Hill, so I knew her very well, and she didn't go to college. She just.
They had 3 children?
Oh, yes. They had 3 children. Yes. Yes.
And then on your maternal side?
Maternal side, Arthur Martin, who lived to be 104. Lulu Martin, who lived to be 96. And they had 7 children.
And where did they live?
Detroit, Michigan.
And do you know what your maternal grandfather did?
He worked at Ford Motor Company for 50 years.
And one of those children that Perry Hill had was your father.
Correct.
Do you know what number he was in the lineup?
Yes, he was the middle.
What was his name? And when was he born?
Marvin Harrison Hill, born in 1922.
And where?
Detroit, Michigan.
And your mother?
She was born in Illinois. My grandparents moved to Detroit to make money working in a car factory rather than farming. And she was born in 1922.
And your brothers?
My brothers, Danny Hill, who was a principal for 30 years. Then he started writing books and traveling all over the country, giving lectures on how to run a school. And he's done very well with that. My other brother, David Hill, was a CPA.
And where does he live?
He lived, Danny, the middle one, Danny lives in Lebanon, and David lives in Mount Juliet.
And you said that your father went to Detroit. Did he make a job change while he was there?
No, he was born in Detroit. My grandfather went to Detroit. My father was in World War II, and when he got out, he started college and went a year and then didn't finish, and started working selling life insurance door to door.
And after a while, did he make a transition in the insurance industry?
Yeah, he moved up to like lower management, and their home office was here, National Life and Accident Insurance Company. And he retired there. So
now your mother, what did she do?
She was a secretary.
And where did she work?
She worked for Charlie Daniels.
A country music star?
Yeah. And worked for ASCAP, which was the Association of
Recorders and artists.
Composers, performers, and artists. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your family's involvement in the community and what, if any, political interests they had.
My family, all the way back, except for one uncle, nobody was political at all. And my father, not political, my mother, not. They just wanted to raise their kids. And my dad could have moved up to higher management, but he would have had to travel. And he said, I want to raise my boys. So he just stayed at the lower level. We had a perfect family. I mean, it was just perfect.
And I think you had mentioned to me a little earlier that part of your family's involvement was at the church.
Yes, my father taught Sunday school, and yes, we went to church every Sunday. Yes.
Tell me, during your childhood, where did you go to primary school?
Went to DuPont Primary, Hermitage Elementary, and DuPont High School.
What was your recollection of going to school there?
Well, my best recollection is the school burned down when I was a freshman. And so we had to go to Madison High School from noon to 6 p.m. every day. And the Madison people went from 6 in the morning till noon. So.
Who was your best friend at that time?
John Whitaker.
All right. And how well did you know the people in the school and the parents?
Well, we knew everybody, or by name anyway. It was a small school, community school. So, and I mean, we were all, everybody got along pretty well, I think. There were no drugs back then. So,
what were some of the sports that you played?
Me, zero sports. I was not an athlete. Well, I did play on the golf team, but only because they didn't have enough people, and you got to golf for free at Old Hickory Country Club. So,
was there any swim team involved?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, I was.
Why do you have?
Pardon me.
That's why you have.
Okay. Yeah, but it wasn't through the school. It was this summer. It was a community pool. We would swim against the country club pools. Ours, of course, was not a country club, but it was just a summer thing. But I was very involved in it till I was 17.
So from about the time you were 12 to 17.
Right, 12 to 17. Learned to swim when I moved to Tennessee, and then took the courses and got certified as a lifeguard and all that, and then started on the swim team. Yeah.
Who is Jim St. Charles?
Yeah. Oh yeah, he lived my neighbor. Yeah, he's my best friend now.
Oh.
But he was my neighbor then, so I've known him longer than anybody in Nashville.
And Charles Whitaker?
John Whitaker, yeah.
John.
Yes. Yeah, he and I hung out all the time in high school. We had a little group of 3 or 4 guys who just did everything together.
Did your family take any trips, travel anywhere?
Yeah, we went to Gatlinburg a few times. Went to Florida one time. Just, took our own sandwiches.
What were your hobbies then?
Reading. I've always been reading, but music. I listen to music all the time. That was kind of.
Do you have a favorite type of music?
Well, yeah.
Country?
Hard rock.
Hard rock. Yeah. Oh, good. Still there.
So never progressed.
WKDA was.
Yeah, KDA, KDF, and yes. Mm-hmm.
Did you have any little jobs during high school?
Oh yeah, anything I could do to make money. So started out when I was 12, mowing yards, mowed a lot of yards. And then when I was 15, I got a job at a fruit market. And then when I was 16, I was putting up a marquee at the Lebanon Road Drive-In. Also worked at the Grand Ole Opry every Friday and Saturday night.
What did you do there?
Sold Cokes. But we could see the stage, so I watched every single show they had for 8 years or something. It was a great job. Everybody loved that. And I got all my friends to work with me. So everybody loved it.
See any memorable individuals?
Memorable? Yeah, well, I worked at Johnny Cash had a TV show then. So they taped from there. And so, Bob Dylan and the Byrds and all that. And of course, all the opera stars, Dolly and Porter and little Jimmy Dickens and Marty Robbins and the old guys, Roy Acuff. Just
now, you indicated that you were able to make some money and started a savings account.
Right.
Why was that?
Well, I started that when I was mowing yards, just because I saw my my dad encouraged that. He opened a bank account and said, here it is. And so I just kind of liked filling it up. So.
And do you recall graduating from high school?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an eventful thing, but yeah.
So when you were finishing up high school, what were your future plans?
I mean, I knew from the day I was born, I was going to college because my parents, they just started saving. They saved my mom's paycheck for the entire 18 years before I went to college because they had 3 boys to put through. So, and they knew they were going to college.
So they were actually saving up for every one of us.
Yes. And then when I got to law school, they said, look, we only saved for undergraduates.
So when you finished high school, how did you decide where you were going to go to college?
Well, I looked at several, but I couldn't afford any of them. So I wound up at UT where my best friend, John Whitaker, was. And I stayed there for 7 years. So.
7 years?
Yeah.
What was your major initially?
Well, I started out in engineering. I thought I was good in math until I got there, and then I realized you had to use a slide rule back then, and I couldn't get the hang of that. So I thought maybe I should try something else. So, and then I decided I liked philosophy, so I just started majoring in philosophy.
And is that why it was 7 years?
No, it was 7 years. It was 3 years of law school.
Nice. So when you were in college, who were some of your favorite teachers and some of your favorite courses? We understand engineering was my favorite.
No, I mean, the philosophy courses were great. I mean, we'd read somebody's philosophy and try to rip it apart and write a paper about it. So, and then you would sit around and discuss it, and everybody's smoking pipe, you know. And it was kind of, not, I wasn't, but it was kind of like I don't know, some kind of a hippie hangout or something that they were.
Do you remember any of the courses that you liked?
Yeah, the existentialism was, big. And then world history, that was stuff I really enjoyed too. But that wasn't my major. But took Buddhism. I took anything that had. I was kind of searching for religion. I mean, I grew up Christian Baptist, but I kind of wanted to see what else was out there.
So, did you explore other philosophical writers?
Yeah, I mean, Nietzsche, Kierkegaard, Kant, and Aristotle, Plato, that whole era.
How would you describe your study habits?
I was a fanatic. Well, I never missed a class, and the reason was I knew my parents worked really hard for this, and I was going to get my money's worth. So that was my driving force. I thought, why would you pay all this money and not? It's like buying a coat and putting it in a closet. You want to use it, so I want to get everything I can out of it. So I was pretty serious about it.
Did you have any extracurricular activities?
I worked a lot. I worked a lot of jobs.
I know you mentioned that you did not join a fraternity, but did you participate in any activities because of the Vietnam War?
Well, that was at the edge of when Nixon was in office, and then there was a lot going on. I was not a big fan of the war, and they had, I don't know how to describe it. I don't want to sound like some blaming liberal, but
well, how long was your hair?
it was pretty long.
We'll just set the scene
I
here.
had like a ponytail.
You're a philosophy major with really long hair and a ponytail. Sounds like someone.
Money and no car and no food. And, yeah.
And didn't like the war. So did you ever participate in any activities on campus?
Well, I think I went to one or two little anti-war things. But then I also had to go to the Young Republicans things too, so that because they said Hoover had a file on everybody, and I didn't want to stereotype myself as one or the other. So I tried to kind of balance it out, just so to keep them guessing, you know.
And with regards to your interest in music at this time, when you're in college, what kind of concerts did you go to?
Oh, I went to every concert they had. Jethro Tull to Tina Turner, when Ike was with her. And I went to a lot of, they had, back then bluegrass was kind of big on campus, and I did some of that, and the nitty gritty dirt band, all that stuff. I went to concerts and plays all the time.
What did you do during the summers?
Well, I worked construction, and
How'd that start?
I had, well, it was a good paying job, but it started out shoveling gravel. But an older guy, took me under his wing and taught me how to be a carpenter. So, and then I took some courses on reading blueprints too, because I thought I might go in that area because I really liked it. It was a great job, and it paid. I mean, relatively speaking, it paid really well. I was, minimum wage was $1.60, and I was making about $7 an hour, which I thought I was doing pretty well. And then I was working 12-hour days, so by Thursday you're on overtime. So, yeah.
What was the main project that you recall for?
Yeah, we worked on Bill Kroger stores. Built one in Teach. We built one in Knoxville and one in Donald. Renovated one in Donald.
So, when you graduated, and I think you told me it was 1974 with the BA in philosophy
and political science.
And political science. What were your plans after that?
Well, I had no plan. My initial plan was to teach philosophy, but you had to be able to read the German philosophers in their own language, and I could not learn German. I tried really hard to learn German. And then I realized—
Why did you have to read German?
Pardon me?
Why did you have to read German?
Well, because of the Kant and Nietzsche and all of these, they wanted you to be able to read it in their original thing. And there were others, Goethe and others, but I just couldn't do it. And then I started thinking, well, there's not too many job openings for an undergraduate degree in philosophy, no experience necessary. And there's no jobs. So I thought, well, maybe I need to do something else. And so I never had any counselors or anything. I just went to class, and I never knew any teachers, but I decided one day to go to the placement office, and I took a test, and it said, trying to figure out what you like and what you were good at. If they could match those two. And so they said that I would be good at either a preacher or a lawyer, and there was something else, and I wish I could remember, but I can't. But I wasn't going to church at that time, so I decided to apply for law school, which this was just like a spur of the moment thing. I didn't know anything about law. I didn't know the difference between criminal and civil law until my first year of law. So I started out, and I did okay, but I was not at the top of my class. And I decided after the first semester that since I had no connections, didn't know anybody, never met a lawyer in my life, that I better build a good resume or I wasn't going to get a good job. And I wanted to work at a law firm. And they're pretty picky about me. So I just started totally immersing myself in. And the other reason, I had a big motivation. That was one, but the other was I never really fit in with the people there. And
this is at UT?
Because, I still had— yeah.
No car?
No. And many of these people were children of lawyers, so they were, they had— I wasn't jealous of them. I didn't fit in with them. So I just did it all on my own. So I didn't have any study groups or anything like that. But I didn't do anything but study. No dates, no ball games, no nothing. Just study. I was thinking they might name a Carol after me there because I spent my life
in a Carol. As you're going through law school, how did you manage to pay for the tuition, the books, and living?
Well, I got a job. Well, first of all, I was living in a closet. And it wasn't a walk-in closet. It was just a mattress on the floor. So it was pretty.
Which closet was it?
It was a house that had 4 bedrooms. And, lived in a bedroom with a guy and his girlfriend, and they had a parrot too,
a parrot.
Yeah, which landed above me and did his business on me one day, and when I was sleeping, it wasn't real fun. But yeah, but I was never there because library closed at midnight, so that's when I come home.
And then you would sleep in the closet. But you're working. You said that you worked while you were in law school.
Well, I clerked for a firm there, a small firm, and it was 3 people, and so the secretaries would go out on Monday and buy lunch meat and bread, and the lawyers would just eat there. And I had a key on the weekends. I went up and ate the leftovers. Oh, and I also sold blood.
How much was your rent for that class?
$35 a month.
And did you have money saved up that you could use to go to law school?
I got a scholarship for the tuition, which helped. And then I worked. I took a summer. No, I took a fall off because fall had 4 months in there. If you took a summer off, you got to work 3 months, but if you took fall off, you got 4 months. So I took fall off, which let me work from September, October, November, December. And I worked, I got to McDonald's at 3 o'clock in the morning, worked till noon, then drove to National Car Rental at the airport and worked till 10 o'clock at night.
And what did you do at the car rental place?
Cleaned them and gas.
Just service the cars.
Yeah, and then McDonald's cleaned the mopped floors and cleaned the bathroom.
More like a janitor.
They didn't serve breakfast back in the time.
And when you returned to law school, now you are starting the first part of your second year, kind of in January.
Right it was kind of in the middle. I think I had 4 semesters behind me. 4. Let's see.
And I think you said that you did go home for Christmas that year. And your father said.
Yeah, my father. Well, I came home. I was 6 feet tall. I weighed 110 pounds.
Is it impolite for me to ask you how much you weigh now?
175. So I got married. That's why.
Well, I can't imagine what you would look like.
No, I mean, the flies were like buzzing around my lips. It was bad.
They're waiting, huh?
Yeah. And, but he said, you need to get out of there because it's killing us. I said, no. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I really didn't know. I just knew I wanted to finish.
So I had asked you about your favorite professors and classes, and I don't know that you really mentioned any favorite professors, but you did have some courses that you really liked.
Yeah, well, the torts course, we had a great guy there, Professor King, and he always animated about, he pulled out all the weird cases about dog bites and stuff, which made it real interesting. And then we had an environmental guy who was trying to close down there was a dam up there that they were trying to build for
Yeah.
And he shut it down because of the little fish that
The darter?
Yes, that's it.
I remember that you said there were some business courses that you took.
Oh yeah, I took all this. I thought that would help me get a job, so I took tax 1 and 2. I took securities 1 and 2. I took bankruptcy. I took no litigation courses whatsoever. I mean, except you had to take criminal law. So I took that. And I got the book in criminal law, which I never had on the case.
Now, did you have to quit law school any other time to work, or did you just go right
I
through?
just went straight on through because that money I made during the summer working 2 jobs and living in a closet, I could get by.
So you were able to get to the end of law school without having to go back and work for some more money.
Okay.
Now, when you finished law school, what steps did you take at that point? This is very interesting. So
Well,
I'd like you to expand on this
the
part.
weird thing was, I took the bar, I think it was the first week in August, I think. And all summer, I never really studied because I thought, if I haven't learned it by now, I mean, I lived in the library. I'm not going to study, so I just worked. And then the day after the bar, second, 2-day bar exam, the day after the bar exam, I had purchased a van for $1,000. That's all the money I had. And decided to just drive around the country with a friend of mine. We had no map. We just started.
Who was that?
Let's see what's out there. His name was Don Fan. He wasn't a lawyer.
He was?
He was just an undergraduate psychology major. So we took off, and it was an adventure. We were gone for 6 months.
Where did you go?
We never got on. The only time we got on the interstate was when we went from the East Coast to the West Coast. All along the East Coast. We spent 3.5 months just going from little town to little town. We pick up a job picking apples in Vermont, or go to Manpower, and they'd send us out digging ditches or whatever.
And what I don't think a lot of people know what Manpower
Oh,
is.
it was, yeah, it's just a temp agency. You could go in and they would find a job for you day to day.
And wherever you were, you went in, said you're interested in doing some work, and they send you out on a 2 or 3 days.
So they sent us out like unloading a truck, and then we had a van, so we'd just sleep in the parking lot, and everybody kind of just took care of us. Everybody.
So how did you manage meals?
Burger King had a salad bar back then, so we would raid that every once in a while for a couple of bucks. I mean, I really don't remember struggling. We had a big frying pan. We just get a bunch of corn and stuff and throw it in there, and potatoes. And
did you learn any musical instruments?
I had a banjo, and he had a guitar. So whenever we would get stopped by the police, well, I mean, we didn't do anything wrong. We were just maybe sleeping in some park that was already closed or something.
Somebody checking on.
They'd see the instruments and they said, play us something. And okay, you don't have to leave the park, but don't come back tomorrow night. So, stuff like that. Yeah, we didn't pay for any campgrounds.
So as you're wandering around for 6 months, was your family concerned about you at all?
Well, yeah, there were no cell phones, so we didn't have.
I suspect you weren't riding home.
No, but I did call occasionally. I think my mom was pretty upset about the whole thing, but she handled it pretty well. But so I was up in Maryland one day. A lady had hired us to build tree houses. She was starting a campground where you had tree houses. So she hired us to build these tree houses, and so we went to bed, and laying there, I said, Don, I think I want to go call my dad. I saw a telephone payphone down half a mile away. I walked down there and called my dad. How you doing? He said, I got a thing from the bar association here. And he said, you want me to open it? I go, yeah, go ahead and open it. He said, oh, you passed. I said, oh, okay, well, I'll see you later. And I went back to bed. That was it. I had no job. I had no. But nowadays, people freak out over that. And if I didn't pass, I can just go back and take it again, I guess. I never really sweated that. I never gave it much thought, to be honest. I had no pressure. I had no
Well, at this point, you have finished law school, you've taken the bar, and you're kind of traveling around footloose. What was your game plan? Once again,
okay, I had a couple of game plans. One, to make sure that Nashville was where I wanted to live. I wanted to see other places, really get into the local culture. So you would go in a small town and go to the drugstore and find out where the jobs are. But anyway, but the other was I'd been sitting in a library for 3 years, and my education had far surpassed my personal skills as far as I didn't know how to talk to people. Well, I've done it. So I thought, okay, I look like a bum and driving an old beat up van, and I want to be able to put people at ease without telling them I'm a lawyer or anything like that. And I wanted to develop that skill to be able to make people like me without, because their initial reaction was they didn't like me by my looks. The older people anyway, and to get people up in Vermont.
I take it you still had the long hair.
Yeah,
and the bell bottoms.
Yeah, well, sure, black pocket on it.
No cigarettes though.
No, never smoked.
So after your dad told you about this letter, what happened?
Well, I just kept traveling, and we went to California, and went from actually Washington all the way down, and met a lot of people, and I only wound up back in Nashville 6 months later, and I didn't have a job or anything. So and I didn't know any lawyers, but I had a really good resume, but I couldn't get my foot in the door. So
how did you get your foot in the door?
Well, my mom worked for this Charlie Daniels, and Charlie Daniels had a lawyer, John Branham. And so my mom knew him a little bit. She said, "Can I send you my son's resume?" And he said, "Yeah, okay." Well, I had a really good resume. I mean, law review and all that. Back then, you had to have the grades for law review.
I think you still do.
I know. I think they look at your writing skills now. Well, some of them do. Anyway, I'm sure that's taken into consideration. But anyway, so he called 4 or 5 people while I was sitting there in front of him. He called Louis Hollabaugh, and and they said, "Yeah," because he said, "This guy's got a resume, man. I think you might be interested." But I looked terrible because I didn't have any clothes. So I had bought this, and my parents, they didn't know any better either. I bought this powder blue polyester suit with white stripes on it, and cut my hair, and I thought, and I went down to J.C. Penney's and bought a short sleeve shirt. I can't imagine why anybody. And then I needed some shoes. I had no shoes, so needed a pair of black shoes, and my feet. I have big feet, size 12. So nobody I knew had black shoes that were that size, except one of my friends. Dad was a mailman, and he had some black mailman shoes. So I borrowed them and went to the interview.
Now, I think you told me that as a result of your mother contacting John Branham, you had a few job offers.
I had 4 or 5 job offers, and I took the lowest paying one.
And what is that?
It just, the guys I interviewed with, I liked them, and they said, "We're going to get you in court really fast." I had never done a moot court. I had never stood up in front. I'd never taken a speech class, but I just wanted to go see what it was like. And so I just felt that was a good place. I thought, it wouldn't matter how much I made. I don't have a family. I don't have any responsibility. They paid me $12,000 a year, and I thought, man, it's more than I've ever made.
Do you recall which firms or companies asked you to come for an interview?
Well, yeah, I interviewed at the Bankers Association. That would have been a good job. They paid good. Watkins McGugan, Harwell, not Neil and Harwell, but Johnny Harwell. Harwell, Barr, Martin, and Stegall or something like that. I interviewed with a bunch, but
where did you?
I'm not saying they all offered me jobs, but
no, but there was a job interview with you, and in your blue suit. So where did you go?
Near Herod.
And who was the individual that you spoke to there?
Louis Hollabaugh I interviewed with, and then I went to lunch with Steve Cox and Jim Duran. And Louis, he was pretty, Louis was a great guy, and I didn't know what to say. Well, all I could say is it. And he said, man, you worked all this time while you were in law school and undergrad. And I said, yes, sir. He goes, well, this will be a piece of cake for you. And I said, well, I don't know if I'm going to be a good lawyer or not, but I know I'm going to make you a lot of money, because what else have I got to do? That's all, you know. I thought that was a good sales point.
So you get your first job, you have your powder blue suit. Anybody mention that?
Oh my gosh. Don Smith, Terrence, is that a polyester tie you've got on there? I don't know. I didn't check the materials when I bought it, but we don't wear those here. Yes, sir. You know, but I listened, and every one of them told me something different. Jim Duran, go down to Kane Sloan, get you a Hathaway 100% cotton shirt, you know, and he gave me like exact. And so I went and bought them. And my first year, I spent every paycheck on clothes. I had no car. I mean, well, I had the van.
What else did they kind of teach you as far as greeting people, how to?
Yeah. Well, it was so I had to be real kind of humble and gentle when I was meeting people on the road so that they would like me. And I kind of went too far in that direction. And I would be looking down at the floor instead of eye contact. I didn't know how to shake a hand. They taught me all that. But I mean, I soaked it up. I mean, I wanted to know.
So the first year you spent your money on clothes. What happened the second year?
Second year, I bought a bed.
Okay.
I was sleeping on the floor. And then I bought a car.
Okay.
Nothing real flashy.
During that first few years that you were at Lanier, what was your role? What did you do?
Well, I wrote briefs for big cases. I thought they were big cases at that time. You know, we represented a lot of insurance companies. So somebody got hurt at Opryland at work, you know, and somebody got their eye shot out at Opryland. I remember that when they had little BB guns. Anyway, but cases like that, and the Waverly train wreck was huge. And so they sent me to depositions that nobody wanted to go to, but I learned a lot from sitting there. And then I also handled the nickel and dime cases where insurance companies paid the claim and are suing the person who actually was at fault, but didn't have any money and didn't have any insurance. And so, but I was in court. Sometimes I'd have 3 trials, you know, in the morning. And I was in court a lot, but it was general sessions court, so you couldn't, there was no record. It was not a court of record then. So, you know, I just learned a lot there. Learned a lot not to do, because some of the lawyers never got out of general sessions court for good reason.
And I think you also observed how other lawyers handle themselves.
Yes,
in
yes,
court.
yes.
And there were lessons there too. What were one or two of those lessons?
You know, just help me with that now, because I've got something.
About don't asking the same question.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, cross examinations. Oh, yeah. Yes. That was huge. I learned how not to cross examine. And don't ask you get so far, stop. If you get what you need, stop. Don't go any further, because they might change their mind or come back around or explain it away. So if you got the answer you needed, just shut up.
And preparation?
Uh,
Did you find out?
Yes. I mean, the more prepared person there, usually won, and in general sessions. I mean, I'm trying to think of another thing. I mean, how these lawyers that were so poor at cross-examination, it was unbelievable. And so I really learned a lot just from watching how bad they were.
You were there almost every day.
Yeah.
With a lot of these collection cases.
Yes.
And what did you learn from dealing with the individuals on the other side about their circumstances?
Well, I mean, there was a real camaraderie there among the lawyers. It didn't matter, what your case was or how bad you wanted to win. When it was over, you would just, you were friends. And you knew there were two or three maybe who were not honest, and you knew that, and they would try to stab you in the back and be careful and get everything in writing. But everybody else was just, your word's good with me. It was so simple then. You didn't have to write any letters, confirming our conversation. You just knew you had it.
I believe you mentioned a case involving Frank Friedman and Shoney's.
Yeah, I learned a lesson there. Mr. Friedman.
Is this senior, Mr.
Yes,
Friedman?
Senior.
A Friedman's Army Navy SEAL.
And his son was in law school with me, so I knew him. And he had found a cockroach in his eggs or something, I don't know. And so his son took the case against Shoney's. So I'm taking this cockroach, the kind of stuff I did. And so I offered him like $500. They said, no, that's not enough. So we went to court. We had a trial, and they got $1,000, which at that time was a lot of money, 40 years ago. And so the newspaper thought it was funny. So they called me and they said, what was your defense? And I said, it crawled out of his beard. And I was just making a joke. Well, they quoted me on that. And then Ray Danner, who owned Shoney's, called me. And I thought, okay, I've lost my job here now, because he was not happy. I thought it was funny until he called me. But yeah, I caught a lot of flack over that.
And that's another lesson learned.
Yeah.
What was your daily routine at the time? What time did you get to work?
I get there.
How did you do your day?
6:30, and I would take care of all the reading stuff before everybody got there, because it was really quiet. And then the phone calls started, and the insurance companies would send these files, and sometimes it'd be a whole box, and you have to read the whole thing, which I like to read. I got paid to read, although it's a perfect job for me. So, you put the case together in your head while you're reading it. And then 9 o'clock, go to court every day and do that. And I don't know. Every day was different, and especially once I got past General Sessions Court, it was depositions. It was a lot.
And towards the end of the day, how would you and your buddies
thank you.
work?
So they had an open bar in our office,
and it was not unusual at that time, was it? Lots of firms did.
Yeah, and one of them had a hot tub too. I will mention that.
I think this is where you're supposed to mention.
So everybody, you just opened the bar, and so everybody could go. Runners, clerical staff, and it was got to know
Secretaries, lawyers, everybody stayed after work.
Everybody, and so I learned a lot just listening to the war stories there because they would tell all their stories.
You weren't married,
no,
but some were.
Yes,
it's a very convivial atmosphere.
It was, the party time.
As you said, the war stories were important.
Oh, yeah, yes, I learned so much from that. And some of it would come from the courthouse, and they'd talk about this case and what happened. And, they were so good about teaching me. They were really good teachers.
And you also learned what they experienced with different judges.
Yes. They knew who to watch out for you.
What did you?
You were not one of them.
Oh, well,
if you were, I wouldn't tell you.
Trust that. I think you mentioned on one occasion photos of a car wreck.
Yeah, that was
another lesson.
So back then, all you had, it was who got into the intersection first, who ran the red light or stop sign or whatever. And sometimes you could tell by the damage to the vehicle. If it was hit with a T-bone, you could tell this one was obviously in the intersection.
Right.
So he had sent me like 8 pictures that the insurance company had taken, and so one of them helped me. The rest of them didn't help me at all. And so I put it in one pocket and the rest of them in the other. And when I got to cross-examination, I handed them the one from the wrong pocket. And the judge looked at me like, "You're using this?" And I'm like, "Oh man, that is not, on record." Yeah.
So, you're working close to where the arcade is, which is 3 to 4 blocks from the courthouse.
Right.
And how long did you keep doing this type of subrogation collection work? Or when did you start doing subrogation?
As soon as I got there, I started it. But some of those cases did not have lawyers too. So it was just great training ground for going to court. And nowadays, people, if they skip that step, I don't know how you go right into trying jury cases without that experience, because it gives me a lot of confidence. Just, okay, I know what I'm doing.
Be on your feet and be talking and making the right objection.
So then I started doing medical malpractice defense.
How did that happen?
Well, we didn't have the main insurance company, but we had like dentists, we had psychiatrists, we had chiropractors, oral surgeons, that type of thing. So I started out with some small cases like that. One guy, the doctor pulled the wrong tooth, and he was a harmonica player for the Grand Ole Opry, and so that he couldn't play the harmonica anymore, he said. But it was nickel and dime stuff that started out, but then I got into some serious cases. It got real heavy, real stressful.
So Don Smith, he was one of the partners at Near Herod. There was an incident in which he came in and said he couldn't take a doctor's deposition because he was a neighbor.
Right.
And what happened then? I think Bob Patterson.
Okay, yeah.
Or Bill Leader, I'm not sure which one.
Are you talking about the case where I had to turn the case down? Or?
I think that.
Okay. So I had this really good case with the plaintiff's case. Yes. And it was a medical malpractice. But I hadn't done any plaintiff's work, but I knew this was a good one.
This is kind of making a change before you've been doing medical malpractice, right?
Right.
Okay.
So all of a sudden I've got this plaintiff's case, and it looks like a really good case. And he said, no, he had a neighbor that was going to be one of the defendants or something. I don't know. There was some connection he had with one of the doctors that were involved, and he said, "You can't take it against this person." And I said, "No, I mean, please, come on, because I think I was about 35 years old then." And I said, "No, I can't do it." So I called Bob Patterson over at
Bolt.
Yeah, Bolt.
Well, Errant Bolt.
Yeah. And gave him the case, and didn't ask for anything in return. And I knew him just from General Sessions Court because he started down there too. And then about 2 years later, my wife and I are watching 10 o'clock news, and there they are, big case settled against one of the major hospitals, and it was that case.
For how much?
$2.4 million, which 35 years ago was a lot of money.
It's a lot of money today.
Yeah. So then they called me, and after 6 weeks later, after the paperwork was all final, I got a call from Bob Patterson. He said, "Is it okay to tell this?"
Yes.
Okay.
He said, it's perfectly normal.
Okay. He said, "We want you and your wife to take a vacation anywhere that you want to go, anywhere."
As a thank you for the referral.
Yes. And put no limits on it of any kind. As he trusted me, maybe, I don't know. But my wife and I are talking about it, and we're going to go to the French Riviera or something. Then my other partner, who didn't know him, he was on a different floor. He did tax work. He said, "Wait a minute, I'm the one that brought that case in. I want to go too." Yeah. So I said, "No, I can't ask him for two." And he said, "Yeah, we'll just tone it down a little bit." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, my wife's 8 months pregnant, so we can't go overseas." I'm like, so anyway, we decided on St. Martin, and we went to St. Martin together with our wives for 5 nights, and we got a package deal, and Bolt was very happy with that. It wasn't a lot of money, but I got to know him. That was the point, and I got to know him right there. And although we had nothing in common, we both had one idea about how to run the law firm, and we eventually wound up together with a couple other, older guys in charge of the firm. So,
what was that idea? What had happened?
Well, I don't want to say anything bad about anybody, but
well, not mentioning people, but the operations.
I think part of it was that you have to run it as a business. And we had some good lawyers there, really good lawyers. I mean, excellent lawyers. But we weren't making any money off of it. And that's not acceptable. I don't want to work to pay somebody else's salary. That was not my goal. So everybody, when we all kind of went our own ways, or some of them did, they all wound up in good places, and it was very amicable. We never fought over one client, or you hear about these splits that are real, but we never really.
We have probably moved ahead because one thing you mentioned is your wife. And when you started practicing, you were buying clothes, car, and furniture. At what point did you get married?
I got married when I was 35 years, and she was 33, and she had a little boy, and I helped raise him. And so she didn't go through any of the hard stuff. She got all the good.
What is your wife's name?
Mary. Married 37 anniversary. I've only had one job and one wife. But if you find something you like, stay with it.
It's a good philosophy. And you said that you all had one child.
She had a child, and we didn't have him together, so I just raised him.
Do you have any grandchildren?
Just have one grandchild.
Okay. with regards to getting married at age 35, I think this is just about the time when you were doing medical malpractice.
Right.
And before you started discussing arrangements in the firm, what was the toll that doing medical malpractice was having on you?
Well, see, every other case, mostly what I did in general sessions work was property damage, some personal injury. But when you get to medical malpractice, it's all, you're not going to file a case unless it's pretty serious, first of all. It's hard to handle. And secondly, the doctors can prevent you from settling a case if they, I mean, and it's in their contract. So if you think, hey, we're going to get killed, we need to settle this case, and the doctor, I didn't do anything wrong. You had to go to trial. You had to. So it was their reputation on the line. And every single case I had was that way. So
did you find that most of the doctors wouldn't settle?
hard to convince them that they've done anything wrong. A lot of them, some of them just said, yeah, I screwed up. But there were, and I wouldn't say a lot, but some of them just, no, I didn't do anything.
Has that changed at all now? Or do you know?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if that's still in their policy or not.
Okay, but anyway, you're defending doctors.
So I was defending doctors, and every case I had to learn a lot about their specialty because I had to cross-examine their expert. So I had to learn everything about, how you put a trachea in the throat and how you
remove an organ or something.
Yeah, I mean, everything, brain damage, and I mean, everything. You had to really get into it because they would make you look like a fool if you didn't know what you're talking about. Which I enjoyed the challenge of that, and I love reading about medical stuff, but the pressure of going, it was just too much for me. And I had some real physical problems. I had this Crohn's disease and had to have some of my intestine taken out. And so I was in the hospital, and the doctor said, you need to quit practicing law. And I said, that's the only thing I've ever been good at. And I meant that. I've never been good at anything else. I got nothing, but
you could swim.
Well, I could swim.
And you played the banjo?
No, I had to quit that. It was terrible. So I said, I can't. And he said, do you drink? I said, no. He said, maybe you should start. And I'm like, what is it from a doctor? So I tried to figure out a way to do what I was doing without having that stress.
And that's when you start talking to them.
That's when I saw that workers' comp was just getting a foothold in. So is that what you're looking for?
Yes.
Okay.
How you looked at having the law firm is now doing medical mal, but workers' comp is also there, and you're defending comp claims.
Yeah, but there's just like 2 or 3 cases in the whole firm. There's nothing. It's nothing. It's not a money maker. There was no money in it from the plaintiff side or the defense side, so nobody was doing it. But right during that period, lawyer advertising was starting to become a thing, and the workers' comp law changed, and the comp rate went up. So everything that you got was based on the comp rate, and so I thought.
For those who haven't really done a lot of workers' comp, explain what you meant by the comp rate went up.
Well, when you get an award in workers' comp, like if you get your little finger cut off, you get 30 weeks of benefits. And the benefits are based upon how much money you were making. So two-thirds of your average weekly wage up to a certain maximum. So the maximum when I started was $45 a week, and now it's over $1,000 a week. Yep. So as the comp rate went up, the value of cases went up and it became lucrative for lawyers to take these cases. So, and the thing to me was that I saw when I would visit these insurance companies with my partners that they handled everything as insurance defense. So mid-mal was insurance defense, workers' comp was insurance defense. The rates were the same, which made no sense at all. But I thought, oh, wait a minute, I can handle 150 of these cases and sleep at night.
And not have the stress.
Yeah, so I decided to try to build that practice. It worked out. It was.
Well, we're going to talk about that. I had interrupted you when you were saying you're talking to 2 or 3 other individuals in the firm and said, we need to run this more like a business.
Yes.
And you said, you know, you're not trying to take advantage of the lawyers that are there. But at what point did you begin to kind of structure the law firm in a way that was more like a business?
Well, we represented a lot of general contractors and we represented a lot of bond cases. So when a job site would go under, you know, if a construction company would go under, the bond people would come in and take over and
finish the job.
Well, there was a big conflict there because we couldn't represent the contractor and the insurance company, the bond company. So we would get a call here, oh, we got this big case, you know, the Bridgestone Center or the Performing Arts Center was a big one. And then we get a call from the contractor, said, we want you to represent us when we can't take that case. So that helped in terms of, there were conflicts that were keeping us from building the way we wanted to. So the guys who were doing contractor work split off. And then that kind of motivated some other changes in the firm. The guys who were doing the general liability stuff started their own firm, and then some others went with large firms, and you know.
I think you were talking about this transition and looking at workers' comp as a way to make some money, but I'm not sure if it had to do with Steve Cox and the Ford Motor Company. How did you consolidate or bring together?
Oh, okay. Well, we represented Ford. That was the only client we had. Well, we had Ford glass plant.
Okay. Ford and the glass plant.
No, the Ford glass plant.
Okay.
Out of White Ridge Road. And we also had General Electric plant in Murfreesboro that made motors. Those were the 2 clients that we had. But there weren't very many injuries there. They had good safety programs. And so there wasn't a lot of litigation. And so it wasn't, I mean, so when Steve Cox and I would go to insurance company, the general liability people spoke one language. The work comp people at the company spoke another language, and they were on another floor. It was totally separate. And that's what kind of the light bulb went off for me. It said, nobody's doing this exclusively. And I heard the adjusters who were handling cases would send me a case. Yeah, the last guy I had said, yeah, well, I'm a jury trial lawyer. I'm doing this on the side. And that was kind of the way workers' comp was treated, as a
lower level.
Yeah, lower, very much lower level. And
but you had been to general sessions.
Well, that's right. I'd been to general sessions. So but the thing is, you still had to go to court. It was not an administrative system. So we're still taking depositions, we're still doing everything, but I can't go in there and get hit for $5 million. You know, it's a maximum that I can get, depending on the case. Medical bills could have, you know, been astronomical, but so I thought somebody needs to, I mean, if I could just identify myself as being good at this, and this is what I do, maybe I could bring in some more business. So then I had some things happen that just made it take off. I mean, I got lucky on some things. Well, one thing that happened, the Tennessee defense lawyers, McWhorter was governor, and he said, okay, the insurance companies are leaving the state because they're not making any money. And we got to fix this. We can't have that. Well, the legislature was controlled by Democrats who didn't, the changes they wanted were totally different from what the changes insurance companies wanted. So McWhorter got everybody together and said, look, it was labor and trial lawyers on one side of the table, and the Tennessee Association of Business, which was 900 businesses in the state, and me, which they wanted a defense lawyer in there. And actually another guy got appointed to do it, an older guy, and he said, I'm in Chattanooga. I can't drive to Nashville every time they have a meeting. I said, okay, I'll go. So I get in there and I realize that none of these people ever tried a lawsuit. They didn't know anything about work comp. They just knew that it needed to be fixed. So I threw out, why don't we just put in there that we have to use AMA guides? So, okay, anybody want to write that law? And nobody wants to do that. So, okay, I'll write it. It's like one sentence. And they passed it. And all of a sudden, I became the guy who wrote the law. And
well, you did.
The next time they needed to change the law, they came to me. And it was I went from one sentence to a 20-page bill that I wrote or helped write. I didn't write it. And then when I got that done, I knew everything. I knew all about the negotiations. I knew all about the bill. And I knew more about it than anybody practicing law. And so the state asked me to travel around the state speaking about it. Well, to clients, potential clients. So
you're talking to businesses about how workers' comp is
because each business wants to know what the plan is now, because the laws all changed and there's a new form on this and that. And I could tell them, I could answer any question because I was in the room.
And you were one of the main authors of them.
And so every time after that something needed to be changed, they'd call me in. And of course I wasn't getting paid for that, but it sure paid off in terms of visibility, because other lawyers knew I was the guy. They would call me, we need to change the law on this. My competitors. And the judges would call me and say, I got this case, what do you think? And I'm like, so I had a reputation there as being the guy. And the only reason for that, there were plenty of other good work comp lawyers around. I did not stand out, but I had more name recognition because of writing the law. And so it just went from there, where self-insureds were calling me and saying, we've got 50 cases here. Can you take them? We don't the person who's handling them is not a specialist in work comp. And see, I changed your firm bio, all of the other people that were doing work comp said general litigation, work comp, medical malpractice, whatever, all of them. Right? So they could I put work comp. And so when a company would tell me we're interviewing 3 people, I said, okay, go to their website, look at what they specialize in. And if it's more than work comp, they're not
specializing in work comp.
That's all I do. So I never said a bad thing about any of them.
No, you didn't.
I just said, go look if they're specializing in.
And you also were, and I won't call it the lectures series or circuit, but you were going around educating potential clients about the law. Sue Ann Head was, I forget what her position was.
She was the head, yeah.
With the state workers' comp office.
Mm-hmm.
She was there for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
She probably was almost as knowledgeable about workers' comp as you were.
Probably more.
Oh, well, over time, because she had to deal with the entire variety.
Right.
But you, I think you said that there was a day when somebody, an adjuster said to you, I think Steve heard about writing a book.
Oh, yeah.
What happened there?
Well, one of my clients, Steve Hurd, wrote a book on work. Steve is an excellent lawyer. I don't know if anybody watches this. Steve is a top-notch lawyer. And she was touting him with good reason. He is a good lawyer. But she said, well, he wrote the book on work common. And so I said, let me see the book. And I went over to a place, and he had written an article for a lecture. You know, everybody submits their paperwork. And I thought, well, if she thinks it's important to write a book, I'll write a book. So I wrote the book on workers' comp. And I got the business people to fund it for me.
Who were they?
The Tennessee Association of Business. I said, look.
Builders, right?
That's Builders and Associated Builders and Contractors, the Restaurant Association. I said, put your name on the front of this book and either give it to your people or sell it to them. And you're going to look good. And I said, but of course, my name was on the
spine.
Exactly. I mean, not mine, the firm name.
Right.
So they were giving the book out or selling it to hundreds and hundreds of businesses in the state. And I would go, and everybody had my book on there. Everywhere I went, Just Truth, everybody.
They knew you before they knew you.
It was just amazing. Of course, it was hard writing a book and practicing law at the same time, but it turned out to be a very good marketing device. When you can go have lunch with somebody and say, here's the book, and here's the, look at the index. You got a problem, go to the index, you know, it'll explain it to you.
So what happened when Tyson's Food called?
Well, they called me and
this is after the book's out.
Yeah. And they said, we've got 3 plants in Middle Tennessee, and we got a lot of injuries here. And we've got 40 cases, 40 boxes. Can you handle that? And of course, what are you going to say? No. I mean, so, but fortunately, well, just go back one thing. When I was having problems, the physical problem, they told me to go to a psychiatrist to find ways to get rid of the stress. Right? And he said, the one thing he said to me, it stuck with me. He said, who does the hiring? I said, I do. He said, do you hire good people? I said, yes. He said, let them do their job. And I thought, good, that's good. Okay.
Good advice.
So instead of hiring lower level people to handle work comp, which is what some firms did, I hired really good people that my clients would like, and it would do good work. And so the firm got a very good reputation
For top quality
for workers.
professional.
You've got a work comp question, that's who you go to.
So when Tyson said they had 45 cases, how many associates or partners were you?
Well, at that time, I only had only 4 of us.
Who were they? You and
Me, Dave Deming, Susan West, Carrie, and
but there were 4.
Yeah. So we started hiring more and more people. We got up to 12. Yeah. Maybe 13 at one time, but 12.
Well, Electrolux also called you.
Yeah, Electrobus called me a month later, and they said it was 40. I mean, it was almost the same exact. And
what was the fee arrangement then?
And the weird thing about it, see, they were from terror. So they never asked me what my fee was. They just said, we want you. Which, you know, insurance companies are, the fee, it's all about the fee. These people didn't care. They needed help. They were drowning in these cases. I mean, you get a carpal tunnel case where the guy goes back to work the next day and he gets $50,000. I mean, they had to stop.
So it looks as though after about a year, General Motors came.
Well, as time went by.
What year are we talking about?
You know, it's about 15 years ago.
Okay.
Maybe 20.
Yeah. This is after McWhorter had been governor.
Yes. I got a call because the law still was messed up. And so I got a call from a lady at General Motors. And she said, would you be interested in helping us start a self-insured association for Tennessee? And I said, well, I'm not your lawyer. You know, she said, our lawyer turned it down. He didn't want to do it. I'm like, you're kidding me. So I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll work the first year for free because I know you don't have any, you know, bank account. And the next year I'll charge you this much per month. And so every month, and we're not talking about local people, we're talking about corporate people flying in from Cleveland, from Detroit, from New Jersey, from Atlanta. And we met in a conference room just like this in my office. We had meetings once a month, and I'm dealing with the top dogs now, not the people who are handling claims, the people who are managing claims. And so, you know, I get to be their friend, and we got a lot done. And we got.
And were you talking to them about setting up a self-insured?
Oh, we set it up immediately.
And these other employers?
These were big employers. If you're self-insured, you got to be a big employer.
You do. You got too many people.
No doubt. So you got
Kroger,
Publix, Dollar General, Cracker Barrel, Bridgestone, Nissan, General Motors, just some other big name companies. And so there were about 12 of us on the board. Yeah. And then you know, it was a pretty nice way to be able to get clients. I mean,
very nice way. But you're setting this up and explaining how it's going to work and how it operates. So when you had a convention,
we had it. So I said, well, let's have a one day convention, and because of the brand new law here, everybody's going to want to see it. This was a different year. This is a different new law. You know, self-insured people actually helped get that passed. And I was down there I was not lobbying. I took the course in lobbying, but I didn't want to be a lobbyist because they're in session in January and February, and it's too cold for me. I like to. But I knew I didn't want to be a lobbyist. It was only half a year. You'd have to give up your practice. So anyway, yeah, we had a nice meeting at the big Cronin Black Center. We had 150 people there.
It was mostly the HR
safety and major senior people in the risk management department of companies from all over, not just Tennessee. And so I put it together, and you know, guess who the speakers were?
I have to think you were one of them.
Oh, we had a panel and one of my people was on the panel. We had this, and we ran the whole thing, and we were the only lawyers there.
So about this time, you now have 12 or 13 lawyers in your firm. You only do workers' comp at this point. What steps happened after that?
Well, that was about, I mean, we never lost anybody over money. It's clerical, yeah, maybe, but lawyers, because it was a totally business deal to me. I said, okay, you got a client here. I said, here's you got your overhead. We know what your overhead is. Per year, it's this much. We know what your salary is. Add those two together. Until you bring in more money than that, we're losing money on you, okay? When you start bringing in more money than that, we'll give you part of it. And so if you were a go-getter, which my people all were, I mean, they really were.
And good clients.
Yes. And so I'd hand them a client but I had to know which client to handle which person.
Right.
I got this one lawyer that loves writing letters, and I got a client that loves getting letters, so I put them together, you know. Here's what happened today, you know. But they want it. So anyway, and this one wants to go drink beer after work, and this guy does too. So you just match them up. And
that's like getting to know people. The 6 months when you were traveling around the countryside, exactly. Got to know people and assess what they like. But I think part of what the genius was in you were explaining to me is how to work smarter. And that this proposal that you made to people, once they began to cover their expenses and their salary, they began to share. And how did that benefit you?
Well, I mean, if you look at it, there's only about 1,800 hours in a year, give or take. And you got an hourly rate that's set, and you can't raise it every year. So your overhead goes up every year. So you're limited on what you're ever going to make if you're working for yourself. There's just a limit. I mean, you cannot get into any higher tax bracket by doing it that way. So when you've got other people bringing in money and 10 or 12 are bringing in money and you're giving them a piece of the action, but you're also getting a piece of the action, nobody complained about it. I mean, the longer they got there, my percentage would get shorter, you know.
Correct.
And when they brought in a client, that was a whole different ballgame. This was for clients that I give them, but I'm just telling you, it was amazing. I mean, I just sit back and watched it. I mean, it was hard work, don't get me wrong, but it was more traffic cop at that time and answering questions all day. So, because they're in my office.
And you're not going to general sessions every day.
No more.
And you're not doing medical malpractice. And the stress level is reduced, but you're dealing in an area that you're very comfortable in.
Yes. And let me say one thing. I had a big company, Cigna, came to me one time and said, we want you to take over all our cases. It was a huge volume. And I said, well, okay. So here's my hourly rate. And they said, no, here's what we're going to pay. And it was like $30 an hour less. I said, I've got 12 people working here at this rate. Why do I want to take anything less than that? And they left. And I said, okay. When I was young,
you would have taken.
Oh, yes. But I mean, we had.
Had someone in your firm actually go to Cigna or Susan?
No, I don't think so. But I don't know.
So how long was it before you made a shift in practicing law?
Yeah, so, I mean, okay, here's how I got into retirement.
Let me ask you, when did you retire?
65, that's almost 7 years ago.
Okay, 7 years ago.
Yeah. So my partners came to me.
Like 2016?
And they took me to lunch and they said, look, we got to have a game plan here. What do you plan on doing? This is when I was 60.
And you're still asking for a plan. I've noticed something. When I asked you, what was your plan? been this constant.
I had no plan.
That was the answer.
I had no plan. And they said, we've got to get out and get a plan. We have to get a plan. You get to identify who can do, nobody can do everything you're doing, but we can have one person doing the legislative. We can have one person writing briefs. We can have one person doing this, you know. So put the people that were good at getting clients, let them do that, and put the people that were good with dealing with the legislature, let them do that. So that we kind of looked at that, and they said, when do you want to retire? And I'm just sitting at lunch, and I'd never even, and I just threw out 65, I guess. I don't know. And but they said, okay, we got a plan now. I'm like, I never really sat down and thought about it. It just came up. So here was the beauty of what happened. The first thing I did when I started getting into retirement mode was get rid of all the cases with lawyers that I couldn't stand. Right? I mean, that's the biggest pain in the rear end.
It is.
Okay. Got rid of all of them. The second thing I did was got rid of, and that took a while. But it wasn't like I dumped cases on people. I never dumped cases on people. I took the hard stuff. I didn't send some young lawyer to some, you know. They wouldn't have respected me if I didn't. But so, and then I got rid of all the clients that I couldn't stand. So now here I am. I'm dealing with clients that I love, lawyers that I love, and I'm making a lot of money, and I'm the boss. Why would you retire? But no, that wasn't the way I thought. But if you think of it like that, it's like work forever. I mean, this is the greatest thing you could ever do. But I got to a point where some things happened. First of all, they wanted us to go paperless. I couldn't do that. I just couldn't do it.
It's a strange way to live.
Secondly, they changed the law and made it an administrative law system with all new people. The people that were there before, I knew them all. Some of them I got their jobs for them. And if I messed up, they would cut me some slack. You know, I mean, that was a nice thing to know. That if I missed a deadline, yeah, this is Terry. I mean, that's the way it worked. But when they changed the law, I got to learn a new law, new deadlines, and deal with people that I don't know and I don't have a relationship with. And they're going paperless. And like, I don't want to do this anymore. So I started going home at 2:00, and then I started going home at noon, and then started not wanting to go in anymore. That's how it went down. It took, I mean, it wasn't cold turkey, and that's what made it a lot easier. My brother, when he retired from the school system, he had to walk away. I don't think I could have done it.
So there's this gradual cutting back on the work, and your colleagues are saying, what's your plan? Which really isn't a plan. It's just a natural force that
nobody had ever done it before.
Right.
So, and I didn't know how it was going to work, but that's the way it worked. I said, let's just go with it and see what happens.
Do you still go in?
I mean, I have a key. I have an office, but twice a year maybe. And the reason, you know, when I was practicing law and I was under the gun, and secretary would bring their baby in, and I wanted to engage, but I'm under the gun here. I just can't stop and go, you know. So I want to have an office to where when I came in, if people had time, they would come see me, where I wasn't imposing on their time. They would only come to me if they got time.
Right.
Does that make sense? I mean,
yes, it does.
You know what I'm talking about. When there's people out in the hallway and you want to go join them, but you got a brief due tomorrow morning.
So we're now at the point where you are pulling back slowly. And one of the things that you've mentioned is this going paperless. What were some of the developments in the practice of law not only this paperless, but this administrative hearing that you oversaw or experienced while you were practicing?
Well, I mean, if you want to go way back, when they started having computers, I mean, that was crazy. I mean, and the billing system back then was time slips. You know, you fill out a slip and they put in, that was huge. We spent a lot of money on some system for billing, and it collapsed on us. And I think I was the one who made the decision for that. So I felt really bad.
Well, also, I think you mentioned that at one point the firm was like 47 lawyers.
Right.
And you were borrowing money.
Yes.
What happened there?
Well, we were missing a paycheck, and I was working 10, 12 hours a day, and several other people were, and several other people weren't. And so we had to make some adjustments there I never wanted to be in any debt personally or professionally. And that's what my main partner, who I talked to you about, he had the same thought. He's a CPA. He doesn't want to have any debt. So basically, I handled the people. He handled the money. You know, he knew when to prepay this and all that stuff. I had nothing to do with that.
When you were going to court on a regular basis, who were some of the judges that impressed you or that you have recollections about?
Well, Judge Schwager at the Sixth Circuit, he was one of my favorites, real quiet, but real dry sense of humor. And he would say something funny, and most people wouldn't get it, but the people who did, I mean, it was kind of a connection there. Barbara Haynes did a great job. She just treated everybody so good. And that's all you really want. Listen to my story and don't treat me like dirt, you know. She was great. I really, when she went into it, she didn't have a lot of trial practice. I was concerned, but she could not have been better.
Who were some of the lawyers that you either worked with or against that impressed you? Who were some of the remarkable?
Well, I mean, when you're talking about Cummings, Connors, and Barry, John Connors, they had a case where we were co-defendant, and I had prepared cross-examine this doctor. I mean, I spent 2 days getting ready for it. And of course, I would let him go first because he was senior, and he asked like 4 questions, and he said no further questions. And I got all this. I got pages and pages and pages. I'm looking at him, and if he said no further questions, then we're on the same page. So I'm saying team. So I walked out of there and I asked him a question, and he said, "Get what you want, quit." And he said, "We got the answer we needed right there." And I said, "Yeah, we did." I had all these questions. And that was genius. That was genius.
Do any other lawyers? I know you mentioned Bill Underhill as somebody that made an impression on you.
He was something. He was fun. I mean,
he's a plaintiff's lawyer, though.
Yes, but we had. I mean, call you up, cut you out, and start laughing. It was just. Well, one other thing I had, Steve Cox. He was my partner, but when I was an associate, the first case I ever went in where I was carrying his bag was when I was in a major jury trial. I was with him on the first one, and I saw him pick the jury, and I thought, I can't do that. That's this guy. It's just he proved his case by asking questions to the jury, and he had him in the palm of his hand. And I thought, I cannot do that. And he was so good that I went to one place, he picked the jury, and the other lawyer, who was a really good lawyer, non-suited, dropped the case after he picked the jury. He had won the case and picked the jury. I mean, that's just a gift. But then I saw Mr. Herod, and he was just kind of like not, good old boy, not flashy, not eloquent, very, very, very prepared. And that's the guy I'm keeping. I'm not a good extemporaneous speaker, but when I went in court, I knew my case.
Well, did Steve ever tell you that you had a future as a trial lawyer?
No, he told me, I think you're too nice a guy to be a trial lawyer.
And how would you describe Steve Cox's personality for those that have never met him?
They called him a gunslinger. That would maybe be a good explanation. He was in Vietnam and he loved Vietnam. So he just thought it was like the Wild Wild West. He could do anything he wanted to.
I think you also mentioned a few lawyers that you met through workers' comp. And I think one was Richie Pig.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they were great. Richie Pig and Kitty Boy and yes, and Pat Ruth. There was and Jerry Humphreys. There were some very good work comp lawyers.
St. Thomas and Vanderbilt were represented by Howell and Fisher.
Right. And each firm had somebody that was doing comp, and they were all good lawyers. I was not a better lawyer than any of them. I guess my PR machine kind of, I don't know.
I think one of the points that they wanted to talk about were trial strategies, and you've mentioned some of those. But there were the tobacco lawsuits in Florida that you mentioned, Brown and Foreman. I think this happened probably when you were younger.
Yeah, I mean, and here's the thing too. If you think work comp, you think injury, go to court. There's all other aspects, from the legislative to the doctor part of it, to the premiums, how they charge premiums. And then I had a Carnival call me, say they're charging us the same thing for the guy who's running the big ride. It's a high risk job. They're charging us the same premium as the guy selling tickets. That's not right. Can you help us? I go, yeah. I didn't know anything about it, but I always said yes, and I always learned it. So, you can always learn. And so I had, and then it's like on the General Motors thing. People, well, can you handle the work comp? I mean, can you handle self-insurance? No, I can't do that. No, you just have to say yes every time and then go for it. But I don't think I answered your question.
Well, I think that you touched on it with regards to the different types of injuries that can happen in a workplace and the different strata that are involved. It's not necessarily all the injury that is the focus. One of the questions that we're supposed to focus on is business development and future planning, and you have covered that. How was your law firm when you left it, and the corporate culture when you left it? I think you've described it, but
it was great. We got along, played softball together, and everybody. It wasn't. I didn't get involved with my partner, who we ran it together for 20 years.
And that's
I never went to his house. He never went to my house.
What's his name?
Sam Poteet.
Sam Poteet. You never went to his house?
No, I mean, but we were just on the same page.
Is he still there?
We were friends.
No. Is he still at the firm?
Yeah, he's still.
Okay.
Yes.
He must be younger.
He's 5 years younger than me, but he's trying to ease out too. So.
Well, let's talk about community activities and kind of a career overview. What politics were you involved in?
Zero. Never.
Except for drafting legislation.
Well, yes.
That was a little bit of touch with politics.
I mean, I never took a side or, campaign.
And you didn't become a lobbyist.
I donate money to your campaign.
Thank you.
Don't go back and check that.
I won't.
Okay.
But I'll thank you anyway. How about activities in the Bar Association at any level?
Yes, I started out, I chaired the lawyers and doctors committee, which usually that was fee disputes of a lawyer not paying a doctor for depositions or something. And then I was chaired another committee, and I spoke a lot, but I started realizing,
CLEs, right?
right, CLE, yes. But after a while, I realized that what I really enjoyed about practicing law was business development, and there was no business development among the lawyers. I mean, that's not where your cases are going to come from. I mean, you might get a referral here and there, but so I started concentrating more on, because I mean, I was doing so much speaking, I had to cut something out. And so I thought, I'm not gonna, and another thing that made me mad was I got up. Joe Bankler was one of my seminars, and I told him how to beat me. In the next case he did it, beat me.
Too much advice.
Yes, I said no more of that.
Terry, we are back, and after this brief break, I'd like to talk about what other organizations or community activity you've had after you retired or shortly around that time.
Okay. Well, I started a church, and that was
what led you to doing that?
Well, I was teaching Sunday school, and the youth director, he was really good, and it was at a bigger church. And I said, "Look, you're too good for this. What's your goal here?" He said, "Well, I think I've been called to start a church in East Nashville." And so, "What's holding you back?" He said, "Well, I got a wife and 3 kids, and I got a salary here." And I said, "Well, we can probably make it work." So,
what year thereabouts?
That was 12 years ago.
So 2011.
Yeah.
And it was going to be in East Nashville.
Yes.
Which is totally different now than it was 11 years ago.
Right. But
kind of set the scene of what was East Nashville.
Well, it was in transition from being ghetto to being an art district, I would say.
But it was primarily low-income housing, some public housing.
The tornado, that's what kind of.
Oh, the tornado and the flood.
Yeah. They came in and had the insurance money and started fixing up houses. I think that's where it started, but anyway. So we were living on the lake, Old Hickory, and it was too far to drive, so we moved to East Nashville to start the church. But I was not the preacher, but I was kind of like the financial guy. And so we started out with 8 people, and then we wound up with about 140, which was a pretty good, yeah. So, and the preacher, after 7 years, we met at the YMCA. They had a nice.
That's where you initially set up the church, is that the YMCA?
Right.
Okay.
But it was a really nice teen room or something downstairs, fireplace and all this. And so, we had 130, 140 people there. And
non-denomination.
Right, yeah. And really good musicians. But the preacher went on to a bigger church. And so we wanted to stay in East Nashville. So I said, I've always wanted to go to church where I can walk to church with Andy Griffin, the old Westerns, So we started going to this church, and one day we saw a video about children sleeping on the floor at the Department of Children's Services awaiting foster placement. And my wife, who ran a domestic violence shelter, said, why can't there be a house? Because we had a house for battered women, and the police would just take us straight to the house. But you have to go to court first to take the kids out. And so we investigated that, and we found a place up in East Tennessee that was already doing that, had done it in 4 different counties. Just a lady just started it, but she knew what we needed, security and boys and girls together, and how you dealt with all of that.
It would be staffed by the state employees.
And that's the beauty of it. The state has an office in the house. We built a house. I mean, we bought a house. A church gave us a house. It's presently being renovated.
Whereabouts is, you don't have to tell me the address, but.
No, it's in East, it's off Trinity Lane where the new juvenile court's going to be. It's about, yeah, that's where we wanted it. So it went to court and you didn't have to drive all over town. And all these, but there's an office in the house for the DCS worker, and it's glassed in, and they got cameras so she can see everything. The DCS worker is, her job is to find a placement for these children. Our people who are volunteers, their job is just to love on these kids. You need a bath, you need a shower, you need a nap, you need food, you need clothing. You've got it.
And what is the total population you can have at that house?
We can handle up to 8 kids at a time, but see, it's short term because we can only have them for like 3 days max. But at 3 days, they wouldn't be sleeping at DCS office.
So are these children generally placed within 3 days?
Yes, most of them, but they have a group home where they go if they're not.
Okay.
Because our plan is not to take care of it. Our plan is just to
transition.
One little problem.
You're a transition
yes.
from the time they
yes.
are removed from a
right.
poor environment or dangerous environment.
The beauty of it, and I might get fired up about it, but the beauty of it is it's for the kids, and these kids come, they've done nothing wrong.
That's right.
They're not delinquents. But they've been in a bad situation where they're at risk of harm. So we bring kids in, it helps the kids. It also helps the DCS workers because they've got a place where they can do their job. They don't have to babysit, and we've got food.
And what is the name of this program?
It's called Isaiah 117 House. And Isaiah 117 is the verse that says, take care of widows and orphans. So, but it also helps the foster parents because what they were having to do is pick up these kids at DCS office and go straight to Walmart and buy stuff. And now they can go straight home because we provide them with all new clothing. We've got a whole room of new clothes. We won't give them any used clothes because that's what they've been wearing all their life. So, yeah, I'm pretty excited about it.
Let me ask you, as an observation, what would you consider to be the rewards and advantages of a legal career?
The good stuff, not the best.
Well, I want you to tell me the bad stuff in a moment, but the good stuff first.
To me, when people ask me about it, I said it opens up a huge world to you of various types of things that you can do. I mean, anything from stockbroker to real estate or whatever it just there's lawyers in all different kinds of situations. If you want to work for DCS, they've got lawyers. If you want, Department of Children's Services.
You can be a lobbyist. You can be a lobbyist.
So I just think that the options are huge, and there's a wide variety. I don't know of any other profession that gives you those as many options as being a lawyer does. And that's just my opinion, but
what do you see as kind of the negatives of today's lawyers?
Well, the 3 years I spent in law school, 3 years I basically lost from my life. So that's always been kind of I wonder if it was worth it or not. But of course it was. I mean, from being able to help people to financial to whatever. I mean, yeah, no, if I had to do it again, I would. But the problem is if you're building a practice, if you're in private practice, that's where the hours are unlimited that you're working, and especially if you're running a firm. I mean, it's kind of like
you had said that.
It's kind of like studying for a test. You can never study enough.
The isolation.
Yeah.
And
family time.
Yeah. And what have you observed about camaraderie among lawyers?
Well, COVID has really hurt that among our law firm because that's where I learned stuff by sitting, walking down the hall, talking to people, asking questions or hearing war stories. And there's none of that now. none of it. And so who do you ask? I mean, it's just, and as far as the other lawyers outside the firm, I mean, I knew you used to know who you could trust and who you couldn't. And now you have to be careful. And there are more that you can't. And I don't feel like it's all that they're bad personalities. I think they've had no training at all. They go out and hang up a shingle and think they want to be a bad guy. And you've got to be aggressive and obnoxious.
I think when we were speaking earlier, you talked about the loss of learning through socialization. One of the things you talked about early was the war stories.
Yeah.
And that doesn't seem to be available, I guess, to lawyers coming up. But you mentioned also the benefit of playing golf.
Yeah, that's what lawyers do.
And are you any good?
Well, I had to kind of cut that out of my agenda. I will say, the first bar tournament, I played in high school. I was on the golf team, but I wasn't very good. But the first bar tournament was at Bellmead Country Club, I think. And I showed up with what I normally wore to play golf, and which is cut off jeans and a t-shirt. Oh yeah. Oh, it was brutal. Every cart that came by me just destroyed me. I mean, you got George Magoogan out there, pink pants, and all the, I was humiliated, totally humiliated.
George is a nice guy.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, no, he was. I mean, he was just funny, but I mean, he wasn't mean about it at all.
No, he wouldn't be.
He never let me forget it.
Well, what do you see the role of today's lawyer today and the law firms in the future? What do you see for them?
What was the first part of it?
The role of today's lawyers. What do you see their role today and law firms in the future going forward? Those two things.
The lawyers today, if you're litigation, you don't have the training ground that I had. And so if you go to these big firms with their litigators, if you find out how many cases they've actually tried, I mean, they're good at getting ready, but you've got to get in there and do it before you can really get a good feel for it, I think. And you don't want to train on a multi-million-dollar case. Nobody wants that. So
do you recommend they volunteer for pro bono cases?
Yes. Yeah, that would be a good thing. Yeah, that would be excellent. Excellent. But that's within the law firm. Where I see lawyers today, there's so much mediation going on now that cases aren't getting tried. So, which is okay, but
well, it cuts down on the development of the case law. That's right. And there aren't those many people like you who have the experience to go in and help craft improvements to the law.
Right. No, you're exactly right. Yeah.
So we've mentioned your involvement with Isaiah 117. Do you have any other projects that are yet to be accomplished?
My window is closing very quickly. I'm trying to get a little travel in before I can't, physically do it anymore. So no, the answer to that is no.
Oh, right. And this is what I was going to ask you about, and that's your retirement plans. And again, I know from having listened to you that it's not really a plan, but you did say that you're just back from Tahiti. Is that right? And where are you going next?
I'm going to St. Martin 3 weeks in November, and then in January and February, I'll be in the Caribbean the whole time. I just don't like cold weather. My wife doesn't either. So, and the family comes down to visit. It's kind of like being a snowbird in Florida. We go there and people come see us.
So, besides this travel and spending time in the islands, you have your church, and what are you doing other than that?
Well, I was a carpenter, so my son needs a new deck, or my nephew needs an addition on his house, or my preacher needs a new fence, let's go do it.
What advice, this is the last question, what advice would you have for a young person who's thinking about a legal career? What would you tell them? Would you encourage them to become a lawyer or head in a different direction?
Well, I mean, it has its rewards, but you got to be committed to it. I mean, there were a lot of people in law school smarter than me, a whole lot, but a lot of them dropped out because they couldn't handle the competition. And so you got to be ready for that. I mean, when you get to law school, everybody's going to come to class and study. You know, it's not like you're great on the curve or something. It's, I mean, maybe I'm not saying it right, but you have to be totally committed to it to get through it, I think. And I admire the people that do it at night for sure. I mean,
and so once they get out of law school, what advice would you have for
them? Find an area that you really like, that you enjoy. Because if I'd have been doing tax work or I tell you one of the worst is pension. Oh my God, pension lawyer. Look, at halftime I think it was Cleveland, but we weren't boring job. But see, we get up and go take depositions and go look at crime scene. I mean, at the accident scenes, and it was fun. I mean, I go to the plant. I've been to plants all over.
Terry Hill, I want to thank you for allowing me to take this oral interview. This has been, for me, very beneficial. I've greatly enjoyed learning about what you've done and how you did it. But I can see why Steve Cox said that you might not be the best trial lawyer because you're too nice. And that comes across in everything that you said. You really are such a nice person.
Thank you for having me.